Thanks, John. And just to echo the thanks on behalf of everybody, I mean, this has just been absolutely terrific. My friends tell me I'm given to hyperbole, but actually I'm struggling to, I'm running out of superlatives because the talks have been terrific and that discussion was just energizing, if not galvanizing. So thank you to all for making it thus. And I hope that some of this energy will carry across into our post-conference informal meeting on the Wonder platform that I referred to at the beginning of the day. So we come to a final session, and it's an important one, of course, because this is about where the funders get to have their say about these interdisciplinary programs and neurodegenerative disease of the brain in particular. I think it's fair to say that historically, deeply interdisciplinary grant proposals have not fared that well in the review process. And actually, we're determined to make a difference. Physics of Life has made a particular aim of addressing that in close working with the funders. I'm glad to say that the situation has changed quite dramatically, but we're going to hear briefly from each of 4 funders who are active in funding research in neurodegenerative disease. And we're going to pay particular attention to their willingness to fund interdisciplinary proposals. Now, the first of our speakers on the funders panel is Dr. Sarah Lloyd from the Wellcome Trust. And as you know, Wellcome have a long and distinguished history of funding leading edge neuroscience research. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. So for those of you who don't know Wellcome and haven't thought of applying to us for funding before, our vision is to support science to solve urgent health challenges facing everyone. Now, last autumn, Wellcome actually launched its new strategy, and as part of that, we'll be focusing our funding on 4 separate areas. So the first one is what we're calling discovery research, and that's the one that's most likely to be relevant for this audience. And this is going to cover a very broad spectrum of research into what we're calling life, health, and well-being. The other 3 areas are possibly less relevant, but they will be much more focused and cover the areas of mental health, global heating, and infectious disease. So I'm going to focus, what I'm going to say, really on the discovery research aspect of Wellcome's new funding. And so, as I said, this will support a broad range of programs across a wide range of disciplines, including interdisciplinary research, I should add. And so we'll be looking very much to fund research which has the potential to make important and unanticipated discoveries about life, health, and well-being. And that'll be regardless of where it comes from. And so within discovery research, we will support research through a variety of different funding mechanisms. And this will include what will be our main open mode or response mode funding schemes. So the purpose of these schemes will be to enable researchers to generate new health-related insights, and in addition to that, also tools and technology will be within focus. All these open mode schemes are going to be open to any discipline, including interdisciplinary research. And that's not just what you might consider Wellcome's traditional biomedical research base, but it's also going to be open to physical sciences and experimental, up to experimental medicine and beyond. And in fact, our approach is to be discipline agnostic and support the best ideas regardless of discipline. The only caveat to that is that the research should be related to health. So within our open mode schemes now, these are going to be simplified from our current offering so that we will be offering only 3 schemes. These will be broadly along career stages. So there'll be career schemes for early career researchers, mid-career researchers, and what we're calling established researchers, and also teams of researchers within that. So researchers will need to be based in the UK, Republic of Ireland, or low middle income country. Researchers from the rest of the world can also get involved, but only if they're part of a team. So these schemes will be launched in the spring of this year, and we're hoping that they'll be open for applications in the summer, with the first awards to be made in 2022. So in the meantime, while you're waiting for the new schemes, our existing schemes are still open, but they will be closing this year. So our early career schemes and our collaborative awards will be closing in March, and the investigator awards and senior research fellowships closing in July. And again, as for our new schemes, we are open to all disciplines, including interdisciplinary research. And again, as long as the aims here are to answer fundamental questions in biology and health. Otherwise, we don't mind which discipline they come from. So I guess in conclusion, all I'd like to do is to encourage you to explore our current schemes and obviously look out for our new schemes. And if you need further information, please get in touch or contact me directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And it's great to have reassurance from a major funder such as Wellcome that you really are open to applications from any discipline. So our next speaker is Dr. Fiona Carragher from the Alzheimer's Society. Fiona's Director of Research and Influencing, and is going to talk about the Alzheimer's Society's activity in this territory. Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you, and I have to say we're absolutely delighted to be a sponsor of today's meeting, and so positive to see so many physicists and mathematicians today, and an opportunity to introduce ourselves as a funder. I think just to say though, my reflection on today has been that there's without doubt dementia research is moving forward at pace. We begin to understand more about brain function, the mechanisms that are underpinning disease, how we get to an accurate diagnosis, potentially pre-symptomatically, but all of that kind of leading to breakthroughs in disease-modifying treatments. And one of the things that we wanted to kind of talk about today was really that we see huge opportunities for physicists and mathematicians to work in collaboration with other disciplines. And I was a clinical scientist in the NHS for a very long time, and certainly those big steps forward, that physics and engineering and maths have made in cancer and cardiovascular disease, we now need to move those, brilliant brains and brilliant people into the field of dementia research. So just a bit of context, just to remind everyone of the scale of the problem that we're facing. There are 850,000 people with dementia living in the UK, and that number is set to rise. And as kind of a major charity supporting people, we know that improvements in both care but diagnosis and treatment are absolutely needed. As a society, we've been supporting dementia research for 30 years. It was fantastic to hear some of the programmes that we've funded in the past, like Prevent and Game Changer, because this is a lot of what we've been trying to do is build capacity for the future. So get really, really good researchers and thinkers into this space. I don't think we can go past today to recognise that COVID has had a huge effect on people with dementia. We know that they have been worst hit, so 1 in 4 of all deaths have been from someone with a pre-existing dementia, and we know that people, particularly because of lockdown, have suffered significant cognitive decline. But it's also affected the funders. So as a charity, it's been a very challenging year, and we've not gone out in 2021 with a funding call, but we will be into next year. Our funding programmes are very much focused on a human focused, so right from PhD to junior to senior fellowships, but also a real interest in that clinician and dissemination and translation into clinical practice space. So really good to see IPEM here today as another sponsor, because that work of the medical physicists and the mathematicians, are really important, we believe, in that kind of interdisciplinary work for the future. So we remain committed to research funding, more coming next year. But for us, it's not just about funding a grant. I suppose the ethos of what we're like as a funder is that we want to bring people into the field and support them to remain there and build their career and be passionate about making a difference for people with dementia. We support our researchers to recruit into their studies. We're a major partner in joint dementia research that John has noted. And we've got some really fantastic mentoring schemes. And one of the key things that we bring and we feel is incredibly important is patient and public participation in research. And as an organisation that's been going for 40 years, we have a very large research network of volunteers, all of which are somebody with dementia or people that have been carers or former carers. So a key part of our funding decisions are enabled by them, but also they support and mentor our research teams. So again, beginning to understand how the research is relevant and impactful, whether you're working in the lab or the clinic. So please get in touch, please look out for our research calls next year. It's been a very tough year for dementia research. It's been an even tougher year for people with and affected by dementia. But collectively, we all have a responsibility to maintain this momentum. The science is moving at pace, and we really need these changes for people affected by dementia. So thank you for inviting us to be here today.
Thank you, Fiona. And we'll have an opportunity to follow up on one or two of those points in the panel. So our next speaker is Dr. Susan Colas from Alzheimer's Research UK. Susan's the Director of Research at AR UK, and over to you, Susan.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for inviting me. I was delighted to get your invitation to this event because Alzheimer's Research UK is really here for several things. So essentially, we want to find cures and risk reduction and prevention for dementias. And we think we can do that by filling gaps in the field and catalyzing research, but also by bringing new people into the field of dementia. And that doesn't just mean the brightest minds from early career stage to established scientists, but it also means new people from new disciplines to bring new ideas as well. I just thought it would be useful to talk through our priorities and goals. So essentially our priority is to fund biomedical research that helps to understand, diagnose, treat, and reduce the risk of dementia research or of dementia. And we want to do that by catalyzing and enabling the field. And we essentially fund quite a broad range of research from pretty early stage until relatively late stage, and essentially fund at big points within that. But we have a number of strategic initiatives that we are either partners on or funding solely as the sole funder. And from the early stage research, we are a founding funder of the UK Dementia Research Institute. And we also have an open grant round every year as well, which we fund as well. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We are also funding the Drug Discovery Alliance. So we have drug discovery institutes in Cambridge, University College London, and Oxford that are aiming to really fill that translational gap that we see so often in drug discovery, and those have been really essential in catalyzing research from that basic end into translating it into targets and eventually treatments. We also fund in partnership with industry the Dementia Consortium, which is open to people applying for it to develop their treatments further in collaboration with pharma companies as well. But I wanted to talk a little bit about our funding opportunities at AR UK. And as Fiona said, you know, COVID has not only had a major impact on people affected by dementia, but it's also affected charities as well. We're delighted that we've been able to continue funding some work this year, and we'll be making some announcements about that soon. And we are planning on funding again next year as well. We noticed a few years ago that we were struggling to fund in the space of interdisciplinary research. I think that's a really important point that was drawn out of the previous discussion, is these projects aren't always deemed fundable at committee stage. And I think one of the reasons is that they're a little bit higher risk. They tend to be a little bit more innovative. So we do have an interdisciplinary grant that we fund and are sort of keen to see interdisciplinary research to our panels as well. And then the other area of opportunity really for funding and also for collaboration is our research network. So we have a network of over 15 centres around the UK that are there to fund small pump priming grants for new ideas, pilot ideas, and also to encourage collaboration and networking across different disciplines and for people interested in dementia research. So that is a really great opportunity for people to find out what's going on in dementia research in their area, at their university, and to make some connections as well. And then finally, I just wanted to plug quickly, we have our research conference coming up on in March, the 23rd to the 26th of March. It's an online event, so that's also a really great opportunity for people to come along, meet new people, find out what's going on in the field, and make some connections. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Susan, and that's really encouraging to hear about the move towards interdisciplinarity. I think we'll come back to that in the discussion to follow. And our final speaker in this session is Dr. Vin Raj Kumar, who's Head of Research at the Rosetrees Trust. Vin, over to you.
Thank you, Stephen. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. So at Rosetrees, so just to let everybody know, so Rosetrees is a private family charitable trust that's been funding biomedical research now for coming on 30 years. And we've been sort of firm believers in interdisciplinary research now for a while. We've been funding an annual interdisciplinary award. So this was set up with Patrick Maxwell a few years back, who I think you're all familiar with, and he's the chairman of our scientific advisory panel. So we've been running an annual interdisciplinary award where the theme changes. So we rotate through physics and chemistry. So the scheme is currently actually open this year, and the theme this year is for medicine to foster collaborative research between medicine and engineering. We're also neurodegenerative diseases and conditions is an area of priority for us for reasons that going back with there's a family history within the founding family. So we're very keen to fund within this space, and we're keen to find the areas where, you know, Rosetrees has limited resources compared to the other funders. So we're keen to find the areas that we can make the biggest impact and would be of most use to the researchers and to the research community. So we're keen to fund research that will allow groups to generate. So we've heard that a lot of major applications are knocked back because there's not insufficient preliminary data. So we're keen to fund research that would allow researchers to get that early data that can be built up towards making a larger application. We're also keen to fund as part of a consortium. We know that as I said, we have sort of limited resources, so we're keen to work with other funders or with researchers where they have additional funds, and we can fund as part of a consortium. We also fund research. Most of the research that we fund in this space is preclinical, but we can also fund as part of a clinical trial. So we do have a couple of studies where we're funding the kind of the bolt-on studies where people are trying to get some mechanistic data from their clinical trials. We have a couple of funding rounds that are currently open now. So they are project grant rounds. So we have a smaller project grant rounds, which are up to about £90,000 over 3 years. So that's £30,000 per year. And that's meant to be sort of flexible funding that can be put towards running costs, consumables, sequencing, or if you have other costs that other funds that available to you, this could be put together with that to fund a salary. We also have larger grants up to 200,000 over 3 years, and they are looking to fund a salary. So that could be used to fund a postdoc or a clinical research fellow. So those rounds are currently open, and the deadline for those is March the 8th. So if anybody would like some further information, please get in touch with me or somebody at Rosetrees. We also have a couple of smaller rounds aimed at funding very early research. So these are small seed awards that are really aimed at getting embryonic ideas off the ground. They're short 1-year grants, and they will be opening later this year. but I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the current funding rounds.
Ben, thank you very much for that. And I should, of course, pay tribute to Rosetrees, who are funding today's workshop, the one on brains, and that we held in November, and the 4 yet to come. So I think this is an opportunity to ask the funders questions about the various funding options and possibilities. Can I perhaps just open the questioning by asking each in turn, do you have discipline hopping schemes or something that might be described there too? So I'm thinking perhaps of someone who has done physics and wishes to get into this field, into neuroscience in general, perhaps neurodegenerative disease in particular, and might have some way. Do they have a way in through you? You'll be familiar with some of the schemes that the research councils, for example, have worked in similar vein. Perhaps start with Sarah.
No, there's nothing specifically aimed at that, but they are eligible to apply to any of our schemes.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to go next?
Steve, so we have an enterprise fellowship scheme that's specifically aimed at transitioning, physicists or engineers into biomedical research. It's not specifically neurodegenerative research, but we're really trying to encourage people from that background, mathematicians as well, into the biomedical research space. Now, so we've been running that scheme for 2 years. It's taking a break this year, but it will be back and running next year. And we would very much encourage physicists to apply. So the last round that we had a lot of applications from engineers. So maybe that's something that we can discuss further, and we can use the physics of life to get that message out there for next year's call.
That's terrific, Vin, and we would be delighted to be one of the places that you might put details or link. We'd link to your details. That sounds exactly in the sort of territory that we're after. Susan, do you want to comment?
Sure, we don't have anything specific actually, but it's something that we definitely consider for the future. So one of the sort of selfish reasons that I came along today is I'm really keen to hear people's views about what is and isn't working in terms of developing collaborations across disciplines. So we definitely consider doing that in future.
Excellent. And not to press you on this, of course, Susan, but might that include a follow-up workshop to today's event, for example, at which potential funding streams might be considered?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really sort of interesting space to go in, and I could sort of, I'm a bit of a research funding geek, so I don't want to bore the entire panel, but I think one of the things that the charity sector in particular has gone through over the years is we've sort of gone from being a kind of traditional hands-off funder, and now you see more and more charities like AR UK, like the Alzheimer's Society, really trying to help and support the grant holders that they fund to get their research to the next step and to progress it further and further. And I think that one of the ways to get better applications is to give a little bit of time for people to actually network and get together. And so I think this model of having a workshop followed by a funding call or followed by some specific targeted meetings and funding calls is a really, really good approach. So if there are specific ideas that people have that they would like to work with Alzheimer's Research UK on, then I'd be more than happy to sort of hear them and follow up, so people can follow up with me directly.
That's absolutely terrific. Susan, thank you. And again, we'll make sure in the post-meeting arrangements that we can connect people in the way that you've kindly offered. Fiona, come to you, and then there's a question that James Rose asked, which I want to put to the panelists. Fiona.
Yeah, so I think that, like the other funders, not specifically, but I think that it's that wrap-round piece in terms of nurturing, mentoring, and I think the connection to people affected by dementia is often the piece that makes the field come to life for people kind of crossing disciplines. But again, like like Susan said, really trying to think about how we can be a partner in the research as opposed to just a grant funder, and that's certainly the ethos that we have at Alzheimer's Society. So really keen to see what we can do to move this forward.
Thank you, Fiona. Again, perhaps we Physics of Life can offer a sort of brokering role to help with that process. James Rowe has made the comment that interdisciplinary hopping can be very creative with long-term gains, but there's a productivity cost at each jump. How do the funders manage this? Now, that's possibly a slightly unfair question, but Sarah, I know Wellcome doesn't have a discipline hopping scheme, but you have successfully engaged through a number of major national initiatives historically at bringing other disciplines into biomedicine in particular. Do you want to comment at all on what you might observe, what Wellcome's experience has been in bringing in different disciplines and how to manage the sort of transition costs?
I think it's very difficult actually, but I think so. We don't do anything specific to help people manage it. The one thing I would say is that we are very aware that there can be a cost to people who discipline hop. And for example, our early career schemes, they are set up so that people can learn and experience new environments. So although it's not a specific scheme for moving between disciplines, that's definitely something that can be accommodated within that. And something when we are assessing applications is when we're aware that people have moved disciplines, we take that into account in terms of assessing their productivity and possibly the length of time they've taken to get where they want to be. So I think, although it's nothing specific, we are aware of it, and in being aware of it, we hope that goes some way towards alleviating what people might think of as a perceived problem, rather than being a genuine problem for getting the next stage of funding.
Thank you. No, that's a helpful advice, really, and analysis. Several comments in the Q&A channel, including flagging up the Dementia Researcher website, which collates and publishes all funding opportunities, and that I think will be of particular interest to those who are not really familiar with the funding field. Vin, there's a very specific, discrete question for you about, does Rosetrees fund applications directly from individuals, or must they always be filtered by, well, supported or come from institutions? Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. The interdisciplinary prize is the only application that we ask the applicants to go through their host institutions. All other applications can come individually. So we do ask for the larger grants if you send an EOI to me, and then we can have a discussion to make sure that it's within our funding remit. But we do allow applications from individuals. We would recommend that you sort of have a discussion as well centrally to make sure there's no duplication there internally, but we do take individual applications.
Okay, thank you very much. Susan, can I just come to you, because you mentioned, I think, the research network arrangement. I have to confess, and I thought I knew this space fairly well, that was actually new to me. I'm sure that's my fault, but do you want to say a little bit more about that? Because I'm thinking that for many of the attendees who are new to the field, that could actually be quite a neat way into making some of these links locally.
Yeah, and I have to confess as well, because I'm fairly new to the charity, so I'm kind of 5 months in, and didn't really know anything about the research network until I started doing my research for the interviews, and I've been blown away actually by the impact that it's had on the community. So yes, I think we should probably do a bit more talking about it. So your ignorance is probably our fault. But essentially, this is a group of networks across the UK that work across either within one or across several universities, and they encourage collaboration across dementia research. They sponsor meetings across the networks for networking opportunities. They have a focus as well on early career researchers. So early career researchers are often doing early career days within the networks as well. And then the other thing is that the networks can provide small grants for pilot studies, equipment, and what we found when we've done some impact analysis on those networks is that those small pilot grants often can make the difference between somebody going into the next stage of funding and being successful. So we've seen a number of those grants actually go on to lead to bigger projects or fellowships for people. So it's a really great great opportunity for people to, if they're interested in moving into the dementia space, or if they have some work that might be relevant, to go to their network as a first port of call, or to come to Alzheimer's Research UK, and we can definitely introduce you as well.
Thank you. That's again a kind offer, and we will take you up on that. And James Rose made a similar offer, and link again through the Physics of Life website. That's really excellent. James is way ahead of us.
I just thought briefly to flash up the map, Susan. Sorry, I was trying to find this while you're looking. Just to give an idea of the whole UK coverage of these networks. So everybody should have a network that they are close to and may already be working with without knowing it. So
that's really terrific, James. Thank you very much indeed. That's probably a good point at which to draw this particular session to a close. And indeed to draw so I'd like to thank our speakers and contributors to this. We're encouraged by your clear enthusiasm for interdisciplinary research. Now, what I'd like to do is just to thank everybody again for, I think, a really exceptional meeting made by the quality of the contributions, both the speakers and the discussions. I think we've had some incredibly powerful examples of what interdisciplinary working can achieve. And I think we've also got a sense that there are real opportunities in future to fund this sort of activity. I particularly, by the way, want to thank any patients who may have come. I'm conscious that we touched on quite a number of clinical and patient-facing initiatives, and I hope you found those both encouraging and indeed exciting. I want to thank again our funders, UKRI and the Rosetrees Trust, for the support, and indeed our sponsors. We've had, as I said at the beginning, some really enthusiastic engagement with all the sponsors who you saw on the slide. So thanks very much to them. And of course, thanks to Steve Parker at the University of York and Karis Baker, who have made the whole session flow so smoothly and effectively. The question that you might be left with is, what next? How can we build on this? Well, I very much urge all the attendees to join the network if you have not done so already. As you heard at the outset, this is a simple, cost-free process, and it will make sure that ensure that you're linked into any follow-on activities. And in relation to follow-on activities, I would urge you to consider applying for follow-on grant funding. Because we would be very happy to consider applications for follow-on workshops aimed at collaborative research grant proposals. So that would include workshops and sandpits. And as we noted, we've got a small amount of money for pump priming. There will be a summer school, and I hope that some of you, particularly on the clinical side, will feel encouraged to want to come to Durham. I can tell you it's a really terrific summer school with excellent speakers in a very fine setting. So I think that that's pretty much it from me. Thank you again for coming, but please join us using the link that Karis has just circulated in the after conference virtual coffee room, where you'll be able to navigate your avatar and have virtual discussion, well, real discussions courtesy of Zoom. And be able to continue some of the discussions that sadly we had to curtail during the full session. So thanks again, hope you've enjoyed it, and look out for us on YouTube and in a journal, an interdisciplinary science journal shortly. Thank you.